This actually happened in May, but I still think about it, and it freaks me the heck out that people have so much rage in them over trivial shit. I was driving down a busy street after getting gas. It was probably around 4:30 p.m., and the sun was still shining bright. I'm doing about 38 miles per hour, and all of a sudden I get cut off by a big white lifted truck going maybe closer to 45. I have to hit the brakes because he swerves right in front of me in the middle of moderate traffic, and I honk to basically let him know that's a shit move. As we both drive about half a mile down the road, we come to a stoplight. This is where shit gets scary. This guy, maybe early 50s, overweight Mexican with a graying buzz cut, gets out of the truck and is yelling and waving his hands at me, getting closer to my car. I crack the window very slightly, just so I can hear what he's saying. He's screaming about how if I'm bothered by him, why don't I get out of the car and do something about it? I'm pretty flabbergasted because I'm a 5'5" woman about 25 years younger than him, and homeboy has no qualms about yelling obscenities at me, including one in which he threatens to snatch me up out of my car. When someone says they're going to snatch you up, it basically means beat the hell out of you. A grown-ass man making very gruff, violent threats to a female much younger than him in broad daylight, with several people obviously watching. Yet they don't help or get involved in any way. What jerks. By this time, my window is back up, but I'm recording him and getting his plates. He sees this, yet is not fazed or compelled to stop. He continues to scream and works himself to such a point that he's turned a deep purple. As he sees cars in front of him moving, he jumps back in his truck and takes off. I make a point to turn in a direction I don't need in order to try and lose him. After I go around a block in a neighborhood, I turn back onto the busy street and into my own neighborhood. But who's there waiting for me? I don't know how he saw me, but at this point I'm freaking out, and for very good reason. He guns the gas and comes right towards me like one would do when playing chicken, veering off at the last second to avoid a collision. He then attempts to turn around at the end of a block. I'm now going about 55 miles per hour right through a school zone and residential area to get the fuck away from him. For a split second, I think about heading towards the police station, which is on the other side of town, but I'm so freaked out that I just don't care. I see his truck go down the next street. I dial the police and put them on speaker as I'm driving out to the nearest busy street. They're pretty quick to assist a damsel in distress, and within about a minute and a half I see a patrol car coming towards me. I pull over and wait, still glancing over my shoulder to see if Psycho Buzzcut is still following me, but I don't see him. I don't want to drive to my house at this point, because I don't want this guy knowing where I live at all. The cops pull up and take more info from me, and I show them the video and photos I took of him on his rant and of his truck with plates. And the cop inside the car enters the info I gave, and says I don't have to worry too much because he lives in another city. Like that's going to stop this guy from being a crazy dick. They said they put an alert out to surrounding cops to pull this dude over if they see him, and tell him basically that they know what he did, and that he can't fucking harass people because that's childish and insane. Something to that effect, anyway. I'm still trying to calm myself down and stop crying. I'm also trying to make a phone call to my mom, because after something like that happens, you feel like you need your mom to tell you it's alright. The cops say they'll follow me to my house, and I'm happy for that. Once we get there, the cop I spoke to said they found the guy and pulled him over. I'm not sure if that really happened, or if he just said it to make me feel better. Okay, so this encounter happened back in 2009. I was 17 years old and in year 11 at high school. It was a weeknight and I had just left my then boyfriend's house, probably around 6 p.m. to catch the train home. I caught buses and trains everywhere, so I had the pleasure of bumping into a lot of quirky people quite often, but this night was different. I was waiting at the train station. It was still somewhat light out, and I was the only person on the platform at that point. Because around that time of day was still considered peak hour, I usually didn't have to wait long for my train. But on this fateful day, it had been delayed. I was sitting halfway down the platform on a bench, and about 10 to 15 meters away, a man joined me in waiting for the train. He had a phone to his ear and was quietly talking to someone. Obviously, I thought nothing of it. A few minutes passed, and I noticed the man had hung up his phone, was slowly edging closer to where I was sitting, shooting me quick glances. Now I suffer from fairly terrible anxiety, so I immediately start feeling a little nervous. I watch his movements out of the corner of my eye. He's a tall, muscular-looking man, probably in his mid to late 20s. Sure enough, he's eventually made his way over to my bench, but doesn't sit down. After a few minutes of silence, he says, "Hey," and I look over at him, pretending I didn't just watch him slowly walk over to me and say hi back. "Where are you going tonight?" he asks, barely making eye contact with me. I'm just going home." He's silent for a while. I was praying he'd just walk away, but then out of nowhere, he begins telling me how sexy I look. Now I remember at the time not getting scared at how abrupt and inappropriate his comment was, but laughing instead. I was tired, wearing no makeup, hair in a messy-ass bun, and I was wearing one of my boyfriend's giant jumpers. I looked like a big, ugly ball, and I seriously thought this guy was kidding around. But he looked unimpressed, almost angry when I laughed. Uncomfortable again, I just murmured thanks and kept my head down, scrolling aimlessly through my phone. He then asks me how old I am. I tell him 17, which is underage, but that definitely doesn't deter him. "You should come with me," he says, and I immediately begin to panic all over again. But because back then I was way too polite, I never wanted to hurt anyone's feelings. Instead of telling this guy to leave me the fuck alone, I started making up shitty excuses why I needed to get home as soon as possible. "I have family coming for dinner. I have so much homework, and I'm not feeling very well." He looks annoyed, but ignores everything I've just said, and tells me there's a party tonight, and he wants to take me. Without thinking, I blurt out, "What the hell, you don't even know my name." He suddenly sits down next to me, his face serious. He tells me his car is in the parking lot about 100 meters away, and we should just go now. It'll be fun. There's drinks and music, and I'll buy you some new clothes before we go anywhere. By this point, my heart is beating out of my chest, and I just want him to leave. Other people are arriving at the station now, and I'm looking around at them desperately, trying to get someone's attention because I'm too scared to get up and move. I don't want him to see I'm scared, so I continue to smile, saying, "I'm really sorry, but I have a boyfriend and I gotta get home." "Oh, you'll forget about him." And then I see it. The most wonderful thing I've ever seen. My train was approaching the station. I was so close to getting away from this guy, but of course he saw it too. I began to gather my things and stand up, and he grabbed my arm, pulling me back onto the seat. "Let's just go for a drive." I got on my feet again and tried pulling my arm away from him, but he held on. I thought to myself, surely people are watching this, right? Someone will come and help me any moment now. But no one did. People could see me trying to get away from this man, but were acting completely oblivious to it. And the train rolled up to the platform, and people began to exit as I was trying to pull out of the guy's grasp. He suddenly let go, and without missing a beat, I hightailed it into the train carriage just before the door closed, breathing uncontrollably. People in the train are staring at me wide-eyed. No one is asking me if I'm okay or if I needed any help. I looked out the train window, and the guy is staring in the window at me, his phone now back up to his ear. As the train slowly pulls away from the station, he begins to walk back down the platform, and I'm guessing towards his car. At the time, I was just freaked out that a strange man had been so physically forceful with me. But 7 years down the track, I'm fully aware of how dangerous a situation that could have been. I know he clearly wasn't waiting for the train, and I don't want to know who he'd been on the phone with. Ever since then, I swore to myself that if I ever saw someone visibly uncomfortable or scared in public, I wouldn't turn a blind eye to it, like those people had done to me. Preface. This happened at my cabin in the US. I'm female, and was about 11 when all of this took place. My cousin Natalie, age 14 at the time, was also involved. Now on to the meat of this story. We were all at my cabin for the weekend. We being my mom, my aunt, uncle, my cousin Natalie, and of course me. It was a gorgeous summer day, probably around 80 degrees. Warm and humid enough to want to hang out in the lake to cool off. We have a jet ski at my lake, and Natalie and I thought it would be a fun idea to take it out, stop it in the middle of the lake, and take a quick swim before returning. So Natalie and I changed into our swimsuits. Natalie changed into her tankini, and I had on a regular bikini. I remember we were both just super fucking happy that day, and were basically bouncing when we walked out to the dock where the jet ski was tied up. We get on the dock, put on our life jackets, and hop in the water. Natalie gets on the jet ski, and I push her out and then jump on, and she starts it up. So we got to the middle of the lake and made sure there was no seaweed in sight, because gross. Natalie shut off the jet ski and we jumped in, and were swimming around, floating and just relaxing. We were getting bored, so we decided to head back. We get back on the jet ski and start driving back to my dock. We get to the dock, tie up the jet ski, and lay out on the dock to tan. Eventually, we get bored of that as well, and start walking to my cabin, probably for food or something. That's when Natalie saw it. Rather, him, not it. Natalie nudged me and looked in his direction, and I caught on to what she was looking at. The friendly, polite neighbor who had owned a cabin next to ours for as long as I could remember was standing right up against his bay window, completely butt naked, staring at us, giving a super creepy I see you as meat type of menacing grin, stroking his tic-tac of a dick. Now the window wanker was about 6 feet tall, pale as a ghost and skinny as a beanpole. He didn't look threatening by any means, but the fact that he was standing there for God knows how long before we noticed him, probably getting off on watching us lay out in our swimsuits, sends chills up my spine, despite how hot the temperature was. We run inside, literally fucking book it. My mom, aunt, and uncle were sitting in the kitchen probably just laughing, having a drink and enjoying each other's company. We run in and we just look at them. Probably we looked freaked out as heck. And I remember my aunt looked at us like, what the hell? And then she asked us what had happened. My mom and uncle were staying silent, awaiting our answer, and Natalie told them everything. They all three became mutually concerned and upset. There were so many mixed feelings going around, but we agreed it was not okay for him to be doing that. They all immediately decided the cops needed to be called and informed of what had just happened. Natalie, being pretty ballsy as she tends to be, remembered she left her phone out on the dock and went out alone. Before you know it, she came back into the kitchen, phone in hand, silent, and just said, "It happened again." We all knew what she meant. She explained he was back at it again in the same spot, naked, making intense eye contact with her while beating off. Now at this point, my uncle had already dialed 911, and where my cabin is located, it would take a cop a good 30 to 40 minutes to arrive. Finally, the cop shows up, knocks, and we all talk to him. He just listens and silently nods, and then he tells us he's going to walk over there alone and have a chat with him. We all wait anxiously, and after what seemed like an hour, the cop comes back, knocks, and we let him in. He tells us that he confronted the window wanker, and that he denied staring at us. But he didn't deny jerking off. He just said it was his right to do what he wanted in his cabin, that he was an exhibitionist and liked being nude for the public. The cop told him, "You know those girls are underage, right? You understand the severity of that." And I guess the cop said he just shrugged it off and changed subjects. Keep in mind, we used to be super friendly with the Window Wanker before the incident. Always waved to him, chatted with him when he was outside around the same time as us. Just usual friendly neighbor shit. He also had a wife. His wife was probably in town or away while he was doing his exhibitionist shit, or whatever he thought it to be. After that, nothing else happened with him. We didn't see him jerking off again and never saw his tic-tac again either. We did, although, see him around his cabin doing yard work, fishing, and the like. The cop directly told us that he filed a report, but couldn't press charges because there was not enough evidence. If enough interest surfaces. Window Wanker never apologized to us, never talked to us again, but he would still stare and give us that menacing grin, like he did the day he was staring at us while going to town on himself. No idea if his wife or kid found out. I hope so. And 3 months after the incident, he sold his cabin to another man. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you guys did enjoy the video, please feel free to leave feedback in the comments below, or perhaps like, share, or subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have a story you'd like to share, or you'd just like to chat sometime, go ahead and take a look in the description below. There will be links to all of my social media, including my Facebook, Twitter, and Gmail accounts. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to include your story in a video or respond to your message as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is, what the theme is if it has any, and how you'd like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. If you're curious at all about the music used in this video, that is always listed in the description below, by name in the order which it appears in the video, and I'll also have links to the artists as well if you'd like to check out more of their work. So if you're curious about the music, go ahead and check down there in the description. Last but not least, if you guys have any constructive criticism, please be sure to let me know in the comments below, as I'm always looking for new ways to improve the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.